I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
And Sarah was 107 years old, and clearly in breach of the Lord's decree that he did give unto Noah after his boat ride, several generations prior, that no person would live past the age of 120 years old. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kirjath Arba. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan, which would have been easier to say, but the authors of this narrative did like to include complicated and hard-to-pronounce place names in their native tongue that did have hidden meanings that would not be translated, like this one, which, depending on who you do ask, means the town of Arba, after Arba, who was a giant and had 3 giant sons, or the town of the 4, presumably referring to all 4 giants. However, there would also be the possibility that the 4 that the name of the town refers to are the 4 couples that will one day be buried there in generations to come, including those that are not even born yet. Which begs the question of how they came to name the town after people who were buried there before they had even been born, let alone died. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah, and to weep for her, as he presumably was not with her when she died, as according to the last chapter, he had gone to live in Beersheba after his little incident on the mountaintop with Isaac. And Abraham stood up from before his dead, which was quite expected, as it was unlikely that Sarah was going to stand up before he did. Though, had she done, it is likely that such an event would have cleared the room faster than a fart dropped by someone who, the day before, had eaten a dozen egg salad sandwiches, with added onions. And he spake unto the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger, and a sojourner with you, a sort of traveller, of the type which would, in years to come, swap his camel for a thing called a transit van, and be known as a pikey, who doth turn up unannounced, pitch his tent where he doth choose, make a mess, and then leave a little later, after convincing those around to part with a large proportion of their livestock, various precious possessions, and anything that would be made out of metal that can be waiting for scrap, that isn't nailed down, or, if nailed down, that can have its nails removed late at night without making too much noise. Give me a possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury my dead, out of my sight, for none of us would want a corpse lying around and cluttering up the place. And the children of Heth, who were otherwise known as the Hittites, who were a Canaanite tribe, and so were considered to be evil, and did live in the land of the Canaanites that had been given unto Abraham by the Lord, answered Abraham, saying unto him, Hear us, my lord, thou art a mighty prince among us, and if this narrative up to now is to be believed, also the rightful owner of the land on which we all dwell. In the choice of our sepulchres bury thy dead. None of us shall withhold from thee his sepulchre, but that thou mayest bury thy dead. And though surely some of them did just do this to be polite, all of them did know that the dead would be taken by the Lord, who in this case did live in a castle upon yonder hill, and was known as the Count. And Abraham stood up, and bowed himself to the people of the land, thanking them kindly, even to the children of Heth, who Abraham did consider to be beneath him, as he did consider all the tribes of the Canaanites to be. And he communed with them, saying, If it be your mind that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, and entreat for me to Ephron the son of Zohar. And they did look at one another, and then back at Abraham, for they were sure that burying Abraham's dead was Abraham's idea, and not theirs. For though the Lord did take their dead, they did enjoy marching up to the castle with pitchforks and flaming torches every once in a while to go get them back. And he continued, That he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he hath, which is in the end of his field. For Abraham was used to people in foreign kingdoms just giving him stuff on account of his wife, who was also his sister. However, considering that on this occasion he didn't really expect to get her back, and if he did, you'd be stuck with what he was going to do with her, he did add, "For as much money as it is worth, ye shall give it to me, for a possession of a burying place amongst you." And Ephron dwelt among the children of Heth, as would be expected, as he had a field with a cave in it within their midst. And Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the audience of the children of Heth, even of all that went in at the gate of his city, so that there were a great many witnesses to that which was agreed between him and Abraham, so that it could not be denied what did take place, saying, "Nay, my lord, hear me, the field give I thee, and the cave that is therein. I give it thee, in the presence of the sons of my people give I it thee," which is usually the way things did go when items did transfer into the ownership of Abraham. Bury thy dead, for she is starting to turn a pale shade of green and smell funny, and besides, if we do not bury her soon, then she might just get up and start attacking people to eat their brains, for surely anything is possible in this book. And Abraham bowed down himself before the people of the land yet again. For if Sarah was to come back from the dead and seek out the hearts and minds of those around him, he did want to be the least visible target amongst those who were gathered. And he spake unto Ephron in the audience of the people of the land, so that all could be witness to the event, saying, "But if thou wilt give it, I pray thee, hear me, I will give thee money for the field. Take it of me, and I will bury my dead there." For Abraham did want to make the point known to all present that he did wish to actually buy the field in which the cave was found, and that upon completion of the transaction, regardless of the rather dubious claim that he did own Canaan, it would not be possible to deny that this particular bit of land that would one day become known as the Cave of the Patriarchs would clearly be the property of his and his descendants, which had little relevance at this time, but would be a highly contentious matter for many centuries in the future. And Ephron, who knew Abraham's reputation for being forthright and honest, never once trying to hoodwink and swindle those he did business with, answered Abraham, saying unto him, "My lord, hearken unto me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that betwixt me and thee? For surely 400 silver shekels isn't a lot of money to either of us. Bury, therefore, thy dead, for she must surely need to be underground before nightfall, lest the count from the castle on yonder hilltop will fly down and make her one of his brides, and she shall live forever in his service, feeding upon those that doth live here." And Abraham hearkened unto Ephron, for nightfall was coming upon them. And Abraham weighed to Ephron the silver, which he had named in the audience of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, current money, with a merchant, made from actual silver, not foiled-covered chocolate, which some would say was his normal trick. And the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave which was therein, and all the trees that were in the field, that were in all of the borders round about, were made sure, but not the tractor which Ephron did take with him, unto Abraham for a possession in the presence of the children of Heth, before all that went in at the gate of his city. And Abraham did surely make sure that anyone and everyone did know that he had paid for this bit of land, and that it was his property, and would be passed down through his line, down the generations, to his people, and surely nobody else would be able to have a claim unto it. And after this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan, and she did neither wake up and start ripping open the tops of people's heads to eat the brains therein, nor was she taken by the count who did live in the castle on yonder hilltop. and the field, and the cave that is therein, were made sure unto Abraham for a possession of a burying place by the sons of Heth. And this particular part of the story did find its way into the holy books read by the descendants of Abraham for all to read, so that they would know that this particular field, with the cave therein, did belong to Abraham. And later that night, Abraham did receive a visit from the Lord, who out of a mark of respect did come dressed all in black, with a smart tuxedo and matching long flowing cape. And he did ask where Sarah was, for he had come to take her with him, so that she could be granted eternal life and live with the Lord as his servant in his mansion on high forever, provided of course that the locals in this part did not come before him, carrying pitchforks and flaming torches, and demanding to take her back. And Abraham did tell unto the Lord how he had buried her in a cave, and that he had bought from a local man. And the Lord did contemplate this transaction that had taken place, and did admire the simplicity of it greatly, for it did simply involve a piece of land that was paid for, using currency of the day, with its ownership clearly defined, and he did surely know that in years hence nobody could possibly dispute its ownership, especially those known as the Byzantines or the Persians, who would have no rightful claim to it, even if they did seize it and build a castle there. Likewise, those who would be known as Muslims, who would take control of it later and build a thing called a mosque there, where they would follow the writings of a man who was unable to write, who the Lord would talk with often, and who would know the Lord as Alan. Or those known as Christians, who would form an army known as Crusaders, who would come later and turn the mosque into a thing called a church, which would be used to worship one of Abraham's dead descendants, who would be mistaken for the Lord himself, and who would be nailed to 2 pieces of timber as a way of an apology to the Lord. Or those who would later still follow a man called Saladin, who would after a great many centuries improve kebabs greatly just by the mention of his name, and would convert the Crusaders' church back into a mosque again, which it would remain as such for many hundreds of years, even when the descendants of Isaac did regain control of it once more, and it did become a place that people known as tourists would visit in great numbers. And Abraham did crank up his altar, and did put burnt offerings upon it, and did inquire of the Lord how he did want his steak. And the Lord did reel back against Abraham before turning himself into a bird and fluttering off into the night.